Hola, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a un episodio más de En la misma página. En esta ocasión estaremos en entrevista con Ashley Audrain. Es la autora de The Push, el instinto en español. La entrevista es en inglés. En YouTube pueden encontrar la entrevista con subtítulos por si prefieren. Ashley Audrain's debut novel, The Push, was a New York Times, Sunday Times, and #1 international bestseller, and a Good Morning America Book Club pick. It has sold in 40 territories, and a limited television series is currently in development. She lives in Toronto, where she and her partner are raising their 2 young children. Her second novel, The Whispers, will be published in 2023. Hola, somos Cristina Esta y Fabiola Ramírez en un programa especial de En la misma página, en donde platicaremos a fondo con autores, editores y maestros.
Quédense con nosotros para escuchar y conocer a estas personas que nos comparten parte de sus vidas y experiencias.
¡Que lo disfruten! Thank you for joining us and for accepting this interview.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so lovely. Thank you. And thanks for your support of the book and everything. It's so nice. Thank you.
From the moment we started this podcast, we agreed that we had to talk about this book. Yes. There's a lot to talk about. Actually, for the invite with the person we invite, we asked for a psychologist to come and join us and give us his point of view, because I think there's a lot of psychological matters here.
A lot of themes of mental health issues.
Yes, there are.
Because we can see the lineage of the grandmother, the mother, the daughter, now the Violet. So all the characters have this particular mental health issue like theme.
Yeah, they do. There is that idea of inherited trauma, you know, that each of these generations is sort of passing on this traumatic emotional experience, or the scars from that, or the emotion from that, you know, to that next generation. And there's also, I think, some real sort of attachment issue, you know, maternal attachment issues between the mothers and the children. And I don't have a psychology background. I don't.
I was just gonna ask. I was just gonna ask if you were a psychologist.
I don't.
How were you able to put in your character's shoes? I know you're a mother because of your Instagram account. How were you able to put in her shoes and create this character so well?
Oh, thank you. I think as a writer, you really just create it. I mean, thankfully, it is not personal experience, you know, although I am a mother for sure. And that I think, right, as a mother writing about motherhood, you know, there's always going to be some sort of personal, you know, influence on what you're writing about. That's your lived experience. That's my lived experience, you know. But certainly, you know, not a reflection of my experience with my son or my mother or my grandmother. And so, but I think as a writer, you know, you are creating these characters and these situations in this world, you know, out of nothing. Of course, you're sort of, you know, you're just building it all as you go.
All fictional.
Writing. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think it comes from just a curiosity. You know, I think a lot of that just comes from a curiosity of what it would be like if, you know, or what it would feel like if. And I think as a writer, you're always engaging with empathy. You know, you're always having that empathetic lens when you're writing a character, writing a story. And I think it takes time. Like, I wrote this book over, you know, several years. And so you're thinking, you're ruminating, ideas come to you, you know, you're constantly adding more layers and more revision to each of your characters. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot about what we see in the world around us and how we understand people and observations, and it all kind of comes together, I think, to kind of create. But I will say that after I wrote the book and after the book had sold and I was going through edits, I thought, I really do need a psychologist's eye on this book. I think it makes sense, but what if it doesn't? And I wanted that reassurance that psychologically, you know, theoretically it held together. And I have a dear friend who is a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and she read the book, and then we sat down and she gave me some great feedback and insights into the characters, and nothing major changed after that, but she gave me some really great insights into what she had said to me was, yes, it all makes sense, and here's why it makes sense. And the here's why I didn't necessarily know, because I am not a scholar of psychology. So that was very validating and reassuring. And I tweaked a few things here or there based on her feedback. So that was really helpful.
Fantastically.
Yes, you did it very well. It's a recurring description when you're very popular among book clubs here in Mexico. It's really popular among friends. And every person we have talked about the book, they always said, like, after I read the book, I just went like, what just happened? What just happened?
At the end. At the end, it's just
you left
unbelievable.
Yes, and with that question, I want to ask you, have you thought about a sequel? Because what happens next? Like, what happens next?
When I finished, I was like, I mean, there's 2 chapters missing or something. I need to know what happened.
Yes, you know, it's funny. I had never thought of writing a sequel before the book was published. Like, when I finished the book, for me, the book was finished. And although the characters stick with you, and you know, you certainly still think about them, I'd never considered it. The idea has only ever been something I've thought of since hearing from readers, just because so many people ask me, you know, would there be a sequel or what happens next? And I think you know, I don't have any plans to write a sequel. That's not something I am planning right now, but it would be really interesting, I think, to see what happens in Violet's life. You know, what does her life look like? And does she learn how to kind of break this cycle or not? And, you know, what becomes,
especially because Violet is the only character we see her as a child and now as a preteen. And she has evolved as a character, and it's just started getting worse.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see what comes next for her. But yeah, I haven't thought officially about doing that. No.
Many of the authors we have interviewed before, they always tell us that once they start writing, the character takes over and the pen just start writing on its own. And I think it's a little bit what happened with you, what you were telling us before. And it's really interesting to see both, like, you portrayed the character, the main character, in a way that I didn't believe it, what Blythe was telling me was true, or was her imagination? Was she depressed? Her point of view was really sketchy.
And that was because she had this terrible mom, and maybe we thought she didn't know how to be a mom, and she was having trouble with the connection with her daughter, and finally she wasn't all that wrong.
Yeah, no, yes, I really wanted the reader to have that experience. I wanted the reader to not know what the truth was, you know. And I think that so and I in a lot of the revisions and the, you know, working through the book through edits, I was really trying to find that fine balance between giving enough so that the reader feels connected to Blythe, but and empathetic towards her and really like understanding her, but also still having that little question in the back of the reader's mind to say, you know, is this really happening? Is this really true? You know, because we know from being humans in the world that there are always, you know, different sides to every story. And, you know, we all see truth a little differently sometimes, you know, and when we're, depending on the lens that we bring to a situation. And so, yeah, I wanted to achieve that for the reader. So it makes me happy to hear that. Thank you.
You did it.
It's sort of it's one of those things where you really hope that the reader will take that away, but you don't really know until it's in the hands of readers.
There's another recurring theme I saw throughout the book. It was the one that had power. Like Blythe had power over Violet when she was really young and she didn't want to change the diaper. And then Violet had power over Blythe in several moments. The dress, or the one she didn't want to talk about her friends, and then the mother and the grandmother, we see it a lot. And there's a character that Christy and I disagree a little bit about the power she had. It's the mother-in-law.
Oh,
I felt she was an amazing mother-in-law, and Christy was always like, she's always there.
I thought she was always over her son, like pampering him, and that doesn't help in a marriage which is breaking up.
Yes, totally. Yeah, no, that's so funny. Yeah, I really love that mother-in-law character because, well, she was so fun to write because she is this, and and honestly, I think there's truth to what both of you are saying, and I wanted her to sort of, oscillate back and forth between, it's almost like in some scenes in the book, it's almost like she could be on Blythe's side,
Yes.
It's almost like she's there, and she has moments where she says to Blythe, I understand how hard this is, but you have to just make do. You have to just soldier on. You have to just get through it. And there are times when, they're alone, when they're having dinner together, and they're, Violet has the bath. There are times when you sort of feel like maybe they will have a moment where they come together and she finds support in her. But to your point, Christina, Fox is still her son, and she is still always going to side with her son, and she is always going to believe her son at the end of the day. And so I thought that it's just such an interesting position to be in. I think being a mother, and I have a son who's only 7, so I will be in this position one day, perhaps. But I think it's so interesting to be, the mother-in-law, to be the mother of a son who is having a child with another woman, because you would want to relate and be involved and have an opinion and influence the way that child's being treated. That's your maternal instinct or whatever kind of kicking in, but it's not always your place. It is not always your place to do so it's quite interesting. But yeah, I think with her character, I think that she relates to Blythe maybe more than she's willing to admit, but yeah, at the end of the day, that loyalty is to Fox with her.
Yes. And also we can see that women in the book, all type of women, they don't get along. You think it seems like Gemma and Blythe are getting along, but it's a lie. And then the mother-in-law and Blythe, it's a lie, or it's based in fact that it's not true love. The only one we saw, it's the woman who took care of Blythe. At the end, you realize that she was the only mother figure she had, and the only real love the book can show in their characters.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Mrs. Ellington. Yeah, the neighbor on the street. It's funny, not many people, and I've obviously done a lot of conversations about this book, and not many people bring up Mrs. Ellington. So you bring up something that I haven't got to talk about a lot, but I loved Mrs. Ellington. I thought the reason I wrote her in was because I just thought Blythe needed her. I thought Blythe needed somebody in those earlier years of her life, especially. And Mrs. Ellington served, a few purposes. She was sort of, she was the person who Blythe really could feel attachment and love with. But she also was sort of this reflection, she was sort of this mirror of how Blythe wanted, to really see herself, which was as, a young person who could be loved by a mother or loved by another motherly figure. And she also, I think at that young age, gave Blythe something to aspire to, I think it would have been very easy for a woman in Blythe's situation with the mother that she does and the grandmother that she does to say, well, I'm just not going to try. I'm not going to even try to have a family. I'm not going to try to have a child because I know how this is going to turn out and I don't have the confidence.
It's a pattern, of course.
But I think because she grew up with this example, on her street, and she grew up in this other house, the Ellington's house, she saw what she could have, she saw how it could look. And then, so it's not such a stretch for her to say to Fox, yes, let's try, because she'd had a taste of it and she'd had a bit of that experience. So I just thought that
aching for some.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that Mrs. Ellington's character was really important.
Yes, it was nice.
Soft spot for her. Yes, because you're right. She is kind of the pure soul in the book. She is.
Yes, pure soul. Ashley, you wrote a lot of different kind of characters, very different between them. Very, very complex characters. How did you come up with them? How did you inspire? Were there something that you got inspired in, or it was just your imagination? It's really, really interesting.
Oh, thank you. You know, when I first started writing, my son was 6 months old. And so I was just in the thick of that world of early motherhood, you know, and the sleepless nights and all of the trying to figure it out. And, you know, it's such a hard time, for a lot of mothers. And so I knew I wanted at that time to write about a mother, you know, who was going through her own different, you know, challenging time, and about the darkness, you know, of motherhood, because we talk so much about, you know, the lightness of motherhood and the gifts and the joy and all of that language, but it actually can be an extremely dark time for a lot of people, you know, whether or not you are suffering from postpartum depression or not, you know, even if you're
the fact that you don't sleep, you're sleep deprived, you're not eating well.
That is all very real. That's a very real impact on a person, you know, on a mother, on a woman. And so I knew I wanted to write about a mother character. And when I sat down to write, just starting scenes and starting, you know, just to figure it out, the voice of Blythe was so clear to me and so fully formed. Like, I worked on her a lot over the years, but she was always who she is. And I loved the idea of her and this daughter, you know, mother-daughter relationships that always really interested me. And so I wanted to write about a daughter and a mother. So they were pretty clear to me. And then Fox felt like this natural triangle, you know, of this marriage that then had this third person come into the family, this little girl. And so the three of those characters were always, you know, that was at the start of the book. Those were always very clear to me. And they really I think that they sort of developed out of just imagination. And just like I was saying before, that sort of, I find it so satisfying to really build these people out of nothing, you know, and sort of, you know, observations about people, you know, not that anything's based on anybody, but you pick up little things as a human in the world, you know, you can't help that. And so yeah. And so those characters are pretty clear to me. And then over time, I would say the other roster of characters kind of got filled out. And there were certain times in the editing or revising stage where I would realize that I needed another character, you know, for a certain purpose of the story, and then would kind of develop them from there. It had never been my intention to have this multi-generational story, you know, with the mother and the grandmother at the very beginning. But as I was writing Blythe, I really started to feel like, well, I can't totally understand Blythe unless I really understand her mother. And so that's where, you know, her character came from. And then sort of the same thing happened where I thought, well, I can't really understand Blythe's mother unless I understand the mother she came from. And so that's how Etta and Cecilia sort of came into the story. It was more this need to understand these women better through their mothers, and then creating the character of their mother. I wanted their character to live on the page somewhere and not just be something that we're thinking about, you know, in backstory.
At the first page of your book, I wrote and I circled it and put hearts on it, because it's the one you said that since we're in our grandmother's womb, our mother and everything, that the generations and the love, it's super pure. So I wrote hearts, like I am connected with my grandmother and my mother. And then I finished the story. I went, no, that's not my type of connection. I erased that little part.
It's true.
I was really like, how nice, you're connected as well as I am. No, nothing like that happened.
It's true.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question. In your book, there's a scene, mostly in the first part, or one of the first things that Blythe was like, really what's going on with Violet is when they were in the park and there's the accident with the boy. As a mother, would you turn a blind eye, or would you like grab your kid and treat her?
It's so hard. It's such a hard question. And I think that that's what made it so interesting to write about, because I think we would all like to think that we would do the right thing. We would all like to think.
But she was only 2-3 years old.
But she was so little. And I think that a lot of us would do what Blythe did, which is to say, to start doubting what we saw and not wanting to believe what we saw. And maybe we were wrong. And what if you were wrong? And then you admitted your kid did something and they really didn't. Like there was enough doubt there that she didn't feel the conviction, or she didn't want to feel the conviction, to take responsibility for that. And the child was so young still.
Yes.
And so
the consequences are huge.
They're huge. I mean, that would stay with that child for the rest of their life and that family for the rest of their life. Right. And so it is a tricky situation. And I think that, you know, I would like to say that I would do the right thing, but I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it's a really tricky thing. And I think that hopefully that's what makes Blythe's character so interesting, especially at certain junctures like that through the book, is that we'd all like to think we would do the thing that a quote unquote good mother does or a good person does. But I think until you are faced with that, you don't really know what you would do. You know, you don't really know what you would say or how you would handle a situation, especially when it comes to something like motherhood, which is so criticized and so judged and so held under a spotlight. And there's all this societal pressure, you know, to be a certain way. And it's still that one of those spaces where I think women don't feel a lot of freedom, you know, in terms of how
we're really judged. And we judge other mothers, even though we are mothers.
Yes, we do. Oh my gosh, we do all the time. Like even though we know how bad it feels to be judged as a mother, but it's so ingrained in the way that we relate to each other and the way that women relate to each other. And, you know, all motherhood in general, like the whole culture of motherhood, it's so built on this comparison and what are you doing? What am I doing? Advice, share on social media. You know, it's like, we're always looking for this connection with each other, which is a very good thing, but it comes with the flip side of that, which is this constant comparison and constant judgment.
And sometimes judgment of ourselves. Like
yes.
we don't take it very like easy. We want to be better and really judgy of ourselves.
I think it's the most we judge, it's ourselves, right?
I agree. And I think that's where this ever-present guilt comes from as a mother, you know, there's always this, as a mother, there's always this voice saying, oh, you could do this better. You could have reacted better. You could have handled that better. Like I have children right now who are 7 and almost 5. And so it's a whole new stage of parenting, a whole new stage of motherhood, right? Where it's like, I'm not worried so much about like their feeding schedule and the napping and all that. Now I'm worried about like, oh, did I react okay when I had to discipline them for this, or when they're, you know, trying to navigate how they're handling their friends. Like and you constantly really second guess yourself about like their behavior and how much what you're doing is influencing them, you know, the way they react to things and all of that tricky parenting stuff of young kids, you know, where you just, you feel like really in some way you are screwing them up, but you don't know how. You don't know.
And are you thinking, or are you writing another book?
Yes, I actually just finished the edits on the second book, which is a real relief.
Which has nothing to do with this one, right?
Correct.
Same genre?
Story.
Or different, same genre or different?
Yeah, same genre, same idea, like same theme, a lot of the same themes. I think I will always be interested in writing about, you know, women's lives, like contemporary women's lives and sort of the interior life of women. So it does touch on themes like motherhood and marriage. I wrote a lot more about female friendship in this next book, between mothers. I really loved writing about Gemma and Blythe together in the push. I loved that dynamic. And so I wanted to kind of explore that more in new characters. And so it has a title, it's called The Whispers, and it'll be out in the summer. And the book opens with a party. There's a very sort of fancy, nice backyard party at a street, or at a family's house on a street. And it's the end of the summer, and so the summer's kind of winding down, and it's one of those sort of Labor Day kind of barbecue parties in the backyard, and it's all going quite well until everybody hears the mother of that family absolutely lose it on her child who has been misbehaving. And it's a very shameful, embarrassing moment for her, where something is her losing it is overheard. And she is quite embarrassed by this. And so that's how, and a few days later, shortly after, her child falls from his bedroom window in the middle of the night. That's the opening of the
I think you better start studying some psychological
degree.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't wait.
So the rest, thank you. The rest of the book is basically the unraveling of that over the next few days when everyone sort of discovers what has happened and all of that.
I was gonna ask you another question, like, tell me if it's a little bit more just to get to know you. I was gonna ask you, kiss, marry, kill, thriller, romance, historic novels. I think I know the answer.
Oh, that's a great question. Sorry, what are the three categories again? Historical?
It's thriller, romance, and historical novel. Kiss, marry, kill.
Okay, so I'm not really a historical person, so I would have to say
kill.
That would be in the kill category. Although I do love reading them once in a while, but it's not so much my thing. And I mean, I really love a good thriller. So I'd probably say marry that one because I like the darkness of a thriller. I really do love the darkness. I do. But in terms of like a love story, there's nothing like just, I would kiss the love story. There's nothing like just a great, like I actually just, a friend of mine, her name's Carly Fortune, and she wrote a book called Every Summer After. And it was, I don't know if it was published there, but it was published all over here. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. It came out this summer, and I hadn't read like a real romance in so long. And I read her book and I was like, I've been missing this, like missing the whole genre. It was
cheery situation. Like really cheery.
Yeah, it was good. It was like I read it in a day and it was like a great escape and I loved it. So yeah.
Very good. Now tell us your poison of choice. What do you like to drink? Oh,
well, tequila, definitely. The right people. I'm talking to the right girls. Yes, definitely a margarita. Definitely a margarita, like a good, spicy, skinny margarita. Yeah.
And were you a class clown, a teacher's pet, or a prom queen?
Well, I was prom queen.
There's the answer.
I was prom queen, but I really actually was the teacher's pet, I would say. That's probably more fitting of me. I don't know why I was prom queen, but I definitely was a teacher's pet.
And what advice would you give yourself when you were 10 years old?
Well, you know what? When I was 10, I really wanted to be a writer. I really did. I really wanted to be a writer. And somewhere along the way, I mean, I have come to this, quote unquote late. I mean, I started not late, but I started writing the book when I was 32. I'm 40 now. Like it's, so this is definitely like a whole second act for me. And I really feel like when I was 10, I would have loved nothing more than to know that would happen for me one day. But I think somewhere along the way, I didn't know any writers. I didn't know you could actually be a writer. I didn't know anybody creative, or I came from like a smaller, very middle class, like working family. I didn't, that whole world, I was the first person in all of my family to go to university. Like I didn't know any of that could really exist,
And now it's really fast and really easy for them in social media. Like kids can have a broad idea what they want to do.
So true. That's so true. And I feel like the kids now, they can access that. They can see what that looks like. And when we were growing up, like you couldn't, if you didn't know a person who did something, it wasn't a part of your imagination. Like you couldn't conceive of it. And so I would have loved, so my advice to the 10-year-old self would be like, you can do it. You're going to, you can. Like that would have blown my mind at the age of 10. Yeah.
Hi, Ashley. It was such a joy to have you, to get to know you, all your ideas. You wrote this book beautiful. Like it's amazing, this book. Everybody should read it because it makes you think so much in so many ways of things of mental health. Why are we judging? How would we act? How would we react to some things? So it's amazing.
I can't wait to read the next one.
Thank you so much. Oh, this is so
You are a great writer, and thank you very much for accepting this interview and giving us your time.
Oh, well, it's been my pleasure. I've had so much fun chatting with you, and thank you for choosing the book for your book club, for all your support. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.